Okay.
It always gets things
Thanks, man. Good evening, this is Commissioner Etter, and I'm gonna call this meeting to order Wednesday, June 4th at 6:33 p.m. And I would like to start with roll call. Commissioner Reynolds,
Here. Here.
Commissioner Garrett,
Here.
and Commissioner Etter is here.
And Irvine is absent.
And Kendall.
Kendall as
correct?
well. Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. Chair, you have a quorum, or Vice Chair, you have a quorum, you may proceed. So you don't have anything on the consent agenda, so you don't need to take action on it. And then,
So open the meeting for the public hearing.
we don't have a public hearing, we just have
Oh,
the
yes.
regular agenda, so.
Okay, on the regular
This
agenda.
is part of a online software, the agenda, it adds this stuff in there, so sometimes you have things that are on the agenda that really don't have agenda items. So.
Well, it looks short and sweet, so on the agenda, we have to approve the housing action plan and then planning commission training.
Correct. Yes. All right, so we'll start with the housing action plan. And so I was on medical leave when you guys on May 13th, I was not able to be here. And so the intent was to bring back the housing action plan, build off of the work that we've done previously, where we had an overview of the plan at one meeting, and then the next meeting we had an overview of the actual financial incentives, the economic analysis related to housing. And so the May 13th meeting was to just kind of summarize that, answer questions, and facilitate commissioner action on that. Understand that there was some concern over the plan. Want to point out that one, this is a non-regulatory plan, meaning it is a plan that it is not required to be consistent with their comprehensive plan, although it is. Many planning things we do for housing or economic development or transportation, things like that, infrastructure, all require to be compliant with the comprehensive plan. The reasons for that is that there are oftentimes aspects of housing that we may want to take on that may not necessarily be allowed or enabled by state law that governs our comprehensive plan and housing. So it gives us a degree of flexibility, but also you have to understand that the plan was developed with the same methodology as many other cities across the state that have the same requirements as us. So the methodology to develop the plan is the same. Some of the solutions may be slightly different, but I would tell you there's nothing real edgy in this plan that's like, a gross or significant deviation from normal or best practices in housing planning. You look at the plan and there's this couple basic conclusions here. One, we have a growing community. Two, for almost 10 years, we had virtually no housing constructed in the community. And then starting back in 2018-19, when housing really was starting to be boom, we got that housing. It's all now occupied. So many of the housing units that were needed during 2008 to 2017, those have never been built. So there's a backlog there. We continue to monitor our development code and make sure that it is, one, producing the housing we need, producing the communities and neighborhood that we need. And so that requires continual maintenance. And so whether we have this housing action plan that says you need to address these issues, your director would say you probably need to change some of your codes as identified in the plan anyways, because they're challenges that I've already identified to our consultants that need to be done. We didn't really have we had one developer tell us we need to look at our master plan standards, but other than that, none of the developers said, oh, the code is a huge problem. Like back in 2017, there was a lot of concern for that. So it, it's a continual, the development code is something we continually manage and tweak over time. Because our needs are changing, our circumstances are changing over time. The second component is we need more housing. What we know now is we need housing by different income levels over a 5-year period. And so those are, and to be clear, it's 179 affordable units, meaning less than 80%. Our workforce, which is 80 to 120% of the median family income, we need 40 of those. Ironically, there's a lot of support in the community for the workforce housing. That's workforce. But comparatively speaking, of the housing units we need in the next 5 years, that's the fewest we need in that category. And then for ironically, market rate housing, which is 120% or higher of your median family income, we need 61. So we know this. How do we know it? Well, we've got fresher data than we had in 2017. So we're using the best available data. We're using the widely held and accepted methodologies to analyze this, and the conclusions result here that we need housing, and there's a lot of things we need to do slightly different to achieve that in the next 5 years. I understand at the May 13th Planning Commission, there was concern for the city's housing urban renewal district. And I will tell you, this decision before you regarding the housing action plan is not a decision on the housing urban renewal district. That is a separate district. And so if Commissioner Reynolds, you have concern for that, if you have concern for that, you need to address that with staff and or the commission. Okay. But these are separate, right? I mean, now I would also tell you they're separate plans. They're related in the sense that the housing action plan is quantifying and defining how we need to get or achieve the needed housing in our community that doesn't exist today. The housing urban renewal district is your primary financing tool to achieve that housing. So if you've got concerns for that, totally fine. I'm not saying you're right, wrong, or indifferent, but I do want to show they are related, but only related in the sense that the housing urban renewal district is intending to help utilize its resources to construct the housing identified to be needed in the plan. So my recommendation for you as planners, and you're going to hear this in a little bit because we're going to do a little bit of training tonight. And it's we haven't done it in a long time, and it's some of my favorite stuff. But remember, I want to be Captain Obvious for a second. You are planning commission. You are planning. You are trying to do the best you can today with the best information you have available. You've been appointed to the planning commission by the city council because you are a representative group of our community and they can trust you with making planning decisions. That means developing plans, amending plans. We amend codes. Sometimes we create codes. We hold public hearings. We get input. Some of what we like, some we don't. This is planning commission, right? So part of your job is to make a decision that's best for the community. Now, what you decide is best is something we'll talk about here in a bit, but some of that is what you have your inherent personal values and views, but a lot of it is the rules that city is required to follow from the state, but also our existing policies and our comprehensive plan related to that matter. In this regard, it's housing. So we have policies in our comprehensive plan that say we need to address housing in the community as needed. So my recommendation to you as your community development director is, one, we do have a need. We've identified how much housing we need, and we've identified strategies and actions to get there. A lot of the things in the housing action plan you're going to be involved with. And we're not saying by approving this plan today that you're automatically going to be approving code amendments. You're going to have a lot of hearings and discussion and involvement on code changes and other things related to achieving the needed housing in the community. What we're saying today is that this is a policy direction we want to go. And I'll share with you that My wife came up with probably the best example of what a policy is. And a policy is really like a compass. We're sitting in our room today and we want to get to Portland, the city of Portland. We're gonna go that direction, not the windows here, right? We know generally how to get there. That's what policy is. Now, do we know which turn to left or right, at which intersection, how fast to go, when to slow down, when we need to stop? All those sorts of things are considered implementation. So this plan is setting a policy direction. Yes, we do need housing. We do need to do these things. We need to consider some of these actions along the way to really be effectual or create the effect that we want in the housing. Many of the implementation measures, you're gonna have a lot of involvement with. So with that, I'll pause there for more discussion or questions of myself, but my recommendation to the commission this evening is to approve the housing action plan as presented. Thank you, Vice Chair.
Well, I like your analogy of driving to Portland. Would anybody ever drive to Portland going that way? If there was a crash.
Yeah.
That government, you might consider the gorge going. Okay, so. Do you think there's a safer mode going that way? I mean, I'm playing devil's advocate here, saying. There's an airport there that I can fly over. I don't want to limit myself to just driving to Portland. I want to have all alternatives to. The analogy to get into my destination. Okay, I just don't want to be limited. Okay, you know, one of the points is even this document, this housing action plan, cannot isolate the information that the HAP and the correlation between increased building was due to incorporating a housing action plan and that though there was a correlation, but even this document says that there was not the correlation isn't exactly, they can't isolate why that increase in housing occurred. Okay, you know, whether it was demand driven, housing action plan, you know, having the policy in place, whatnot, a combination of the two, a perfect storm, you know. And right now, so when we started talking about this in April, at that time, in our market, we didn't have one single house under 300,000 for sale. Right now, you're starting to see houses pop up under 300,000 for sale, the same houses that were on the market in April. And I'm saying, you know, we're seeing some affordability come into this without, I guess, incentives or other drivers that are artificially put into the market by the city. And is there maybe letting time play out and seeing where the market goes and then using this plan to address, I know that's why we have this plan, is to pivot, is if something isn't working, we can pivot and use policy to drive growth or development in the desired way that the city sees housing needs in order to fulfill the demand or the perceived demand. And whether personal or not, I don't know if the journey of purchasing a house needs to be artificially, you know, incentivized by the city. You know, people have the right to buy or not buy a house. You know, people, as the same as people have the right to work or not work for a job that, you know, doesn't pay them enough or pays them more, or how they spend their money, whatever. That's all personal choice. So I don't say that the correlation between the housing boom and the HAP wasn't due to the HAP, but I'm not saying that it is. I mean, I'm not saying that it is or isn't. I don't know. And this document doesn't know either. You know, Eco Northwest, they have their biases and. You know, I was trying to figure out what's true and what's not. So, you know, they get paid to put this out and we get to read it, so. That's my thing, I just. Wanna, I wanna make the right decision. And I wanna make the right decision with the information that's available. And I'm trying. I'm reading this and I'm going through it and I don't know, I really don't, Nick. But, you know. Do we artificially, you know. Promote certain housing. In order to get an outcome that we deem is needed. When it might just be that time or that phase in the market that's creating that gap between affordability and not being affordable.
Commissioner, I'm not sure if there's a question there you want me to respond, but.
There's not, it was just a
Yeah.
statement.
But I will tell you that the city, no matter what, always has regulatory input over the housing market, so we always have an effect over the housing market. So whether the financial input or effect on the market is theirs, that's only existed since 2020. So, I would tell you that, there's not too many people I talk to in the community and in the profession that believe that Matters has a sufficient supply of housing, and that when you see the housing cycle enter into certain phases, that we should stop building housing. Because oftentimes in rural areas, we'll see housing construction or development as a whole during, quite honestly, very perfect economic circumstances. And so that construction happens later, or when those circumstances are very perfect and allowed. And then when those circumstances no longer exist, or one of the rural areas are the first areas where construction stops.
But as a city, we're not building housing.
I'm not saying we are. So,
Okay,
and so, when you reference the current conditions of the economy, we're just entering a different phase of the housing cycle. There's different factors that are playing into it, and so those will be different than a year from now, and certainly 5 years from now.
right,
And so, this housing plan, and of course our comprehensive plan, asks us to be much more deliberate about housing and making sure that, certainly when the market is burying housing or constructing housing, that we make sure that it can be built. But in times when it's not economically viable or challenged, we've got tools to do that.
tools to do what?
Help housing be constructed.
But when it's not economically viable or doable, I mean, that's where I'm lost, why do we need to do that?
One, we had a requirement by state law that we provide a land supply and have regulations that allow needed housing to be constructed in our community. It's called Goal 10 housing, statewide planning goal. It's Goal 10 in our comprehensive plan.
Okay,
And there's a rational basis for that. And in 2022, we adopted the housing capacity analysis. That is the primary analysis that every city has to identify how much land is needed based on the population, housing development, income, other demographics. So this housing action plan takes that a little more into clarity and says, okay, well, we know we need this much housing based on the housing capacity analysis, which is a 10-year analysis.
Mhm.
And how are we going to achieve that?
So it's a 10-year analysis with a 20-year inventory?
Yes, our urban growth boundary has a 20-year inventory for
Okay.
housing.
Okay, and if growth exceeds that 10, sorry, everyone wants to go home.
No, it's.
Okay, I just, if growth exceeds that 10-year, let's say at an 8-year, let's 2 years early. So we I'm just throwing a what if, a hypothetical. So can we expect that 20-year increase in growth? That unexpected 20-year increase that led us to reach our goals. By year 8. Does that mean the overall 20-year inventory goes to a 16 or an 18? It doesn't matter.
So I think what you're asking is, what if we achieve our housing goals
Mhm.
earlier than expected?
Yeah, or not housing, but population wise, yeah.
Yeah, and so unfortunately, I don't study it in great detail, but it's very likely that there aren't too many cities that have that challenge, have that problem, or have that circumstance, however you want to look at it.
Okay.
And if you did, it would require the city to update our housing capacity analysis again. And again, make changes to our policies, our regulations. And at that point in time, we will be over 10,000. We're gonna have some other fund requirements from the state to meet. And so remember, planning from a theoretical perspective is an iterative process. Okay, by that I mean you identify a problem, you define that problem, you identify some alternatives, you pick out which alternative is the best, you implement that best solution, then you monitor it. And then you figure out if the problem still exists, if it's different, and you go through that cycle again. So it's iterative. And in this case, the iteration is, every 10 years, we need to update the housing capacity analysis. And that's going to identify whether we need to add land or urban growth boundary, change our regulations or otherwise. So it's not static in the sense that just because we have a 2022 analysis, we're done. The fact of the matter is that we made that housing capacity analysis with some assumptions with the data that was available at that time.
Yeah.
And we did our reasonable best using the best available data with accepted methodologies, and came to conclusions that are accepted in the profession and within the state law to say this is what we need for our community. And so this housing action plan is really implementing. So it's clarifying what our comprehensive plan says that we need. And if we achieve more housing in our community sooner than planned or identified, well, that's just a need for reevaluation of our policies. Yes, theoretically, it could be, oh, well, we don't need to do anything anymore. I don't know that you'll ever practically or likely ever get to that scenario. I just don't see that. Now, are you going to see communities where they see explosive growth? Oh, there's lots of communities that have seen that, right? But I just don't see it here. Maybe there's an unforeseen event or circumstances, likely development. Maybe up to the airport, we cite a business with 1,000 jobs or 2,000 jobs that really impacts our community. And, candidly, that's going to affect your housing capacity or your demand for housing in the opposite. Meaning you probably don't have enough housing for all those employees or workers. And so, that's the opposite. But those are the kind of unforeseen. That's what?
Or what do they call it? Black swan event, or black swan event. Those are those one-offs that you can have them, but they're outliers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's likely,
But
what I'm trying to explain is those are the unforeseen circumstances that we can't account for today.
Yeah.
But that would affect your plan and whether you are meeting or achieving those outcomes sooner or later or differently than expected.
Unforeseen.
Yeah.
It's like saying, an Erickson Aero tanker could run out of gas and crash into downtown. Unforeseen. Okay. Oh well. No, I understand that.
So I don't want to belabor the point, but the fact of the matter is, if the circumstances change in your plan or the assumptions that are different in your plan, then you update your plan, you reevaluate your plan.
That's what, we pivot, but again, back to the plan, the information used and the correlation between the implementation of the housing action plan and the new housing cannot be directly, you know. You're not able to isolate anything that led to that in your housing action plan. You're not able to isolate anything in your housing action plan that led to the increased growth in housing.
You're right,
I don't know,
This
that's
is-
on the report.
Commissioner, this is not an analysis that is trying to identify the cause. It is quantifying the need, regardless of the cause or creation of the need. It's saying there is a need and you need X number of homes and there's ways to do that.
Okay.
We can, that's for an economist or a housing developer to figure out what the causes are, but that isn't really the purpose of this plan.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
That's what,
My take so far, because I've just read this a few times, is that this plan gives, like the compass analogy. It gives the city tools to address issues that, and I've heard that too, there's not enough housing that matters. So this plan gives the city a compass, a goal, and also provides solutions the city could use if they're trying to get a new development established for the price point of the houses we're looking for. Now, if those houses all of a sudden magically start being built, the city would need to use the tools outlined in the action plan, and they would just be built without any incentives or any input from the city. However, if housing continues to be an issue where people in our town who work here can no longer afford to buy or rent, then the tools are given to the city. They can step in and start to incentivize developers to provide housing for people that work in our town. Is that what I'm understanding?
yes, that's a fair assessment.
I've been out of the loop for a while, so just remind me, is there a current plan in place and is this replacing a plan?
Yeah, so
That
the
is-
2018 Housing Action Plan was established in December of 18. It's a 5-year action plan, right? So there's different types of plans, and the word action is purposeful in the sense that over 5 years, there's certain actions the city can take should it be needed to accomplish housing. So we're at 5 years and we need to update that because we tried to define a shorter term plan so that it's more actionable, it's more measurable, and more likely to see the desired changes. And so we're updating that plan for the same purpose.
And does this go to city council for approval?
Yes.
after us?
Has it already been approved by city council?
It has gone to the city council and they did not approve it yet.
They did not. So the paper was wrong.
Did not read the newspaper, so I don't know what you're
I
referring
read
to.
it this morning, said the city council approved the housing action.
My understanding they did not.
So they did not.
So it's gonna basically go back to them for,
I believe so. Bethany, am I wrong on that? Did they approve it?
Yeah.
Oh, they did approve,
Yeah,
they
okay.
did.
Oh, they did.
I was on leave, so I don't know.
Okay.
They identified some changes they wanted to make, and then they approved it as is.
And then we have to approve it also, and then it's pretty much
I think
been
it's
in
already
action.
approved.
Well, I would tell you, Commissioner and Vice Chair, that if you want your perspective considered as a planning commission, you should consider acting, making a decision on this. Whether you agree with it or not is subject to your vote. But the time did get screwed up because of my medical leave, and then we had some contracting issues. Eco Northwest was hired under a grant. We needed to get the plan finalized, and it's just kind of way the timing worked. It's definitely not desired, but be as it may.
You can't get sick, you can't go have surgery ever again. No.
So briefly, I went through it and I feel like it is a good plan, and I'm all for Madras' growth. That's why I'm here, like you said, I want the town to grow in the right way, I want my employees to be able to have affordable housing. I want this to continue, so I'm thankful for, everything that you said, and it is, to me, it's a good plan. It sounds like we have to have a plan in place. I mean, it's
There's
replacement.
already a plan, it's already been approved.
Okay,
Um,
but it's the plan is expiring and then this one, will replace
No, I
it.
mean, city council's already
Yes.
approved, it, so.
So. How do you feel about the plan? Commissioner Garrett,
I also agree, I think it's good, we've moved back for 4 years and it was difficult for us to find a home that we could afford. It was down on a teacher salary, so I think it's important that. The city has identified the issue, I mean. It's evident that we have an affordability issue, in all of Central Oregon, Sadness now too, and so I think that we do need to move forward.
so in that case, I would like to make a motion, and I would be in favor to approve the plan.
I'll second your motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All not in favor, say nay. Okay. Motion carries.
It is, Commissioner Reynolds, are you,
I'm abstaining from,
thank you, when you abstain, you need
yeah,
to,
I'm
you
abstaining.
need to
from-
note that.
Sorry, yeah, I am abstaining from here.
So should I go back and say the motion carries?
The motion did carry, you have two votes for aye. No one voted against it, and you have one abstention.
Sorry, I'm not that great at this motion stuff.
Commissioner Reynolds is trying to make it creative for you, John.
I'm sorry, I'm throwing every wrench out there I got. Maybe a pop this.
Okay, we're gonna pause here and pivot over to our training. So, maybe take a 1 or 2 minute break and we'll get back with that. You want to pull up, actually. You don't need to pull up next, but it's the CU 21-3. You just get that radio. Okay. 21.
I just didn't stop.
They should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me know here.
But I mean, it's not the revolver.
I feel like, basically with, like, having a coach, you know, it's a lot more.
Did you want the staff report or the findings?
Here, so just like this, you know.
Findings.
Okay.
Not the staff report, you.
Perfect. I was like, we don't have that in that folder. Final or revised, what's just newest?
All right, commissioners, so I've got a little bit of training for you this evening, intended to be, maybe 30 minutes or so. Recognizing we've already been here a bit, and so when I looked at the training that we could do, I tried to balance, like, what do you need to be, maybe call it more effective or understand how hearings and decisions are made versus trying to start of our broad, bigger picture ideas about what it means to be a planning commissioner. So I kind of split the baby. So what I wanted to do tonight is spend a few minutes talking about the role of the planning commissioner. I'll just kind of walk through this. And then I do want to go over a conditional use permit decision that the planning commission made in 2021. And so what I thought we would do is learn how to use and review the staff report and then use the findings and decisions. So a little bit of kind of big picture pie in the sky with a little bit of nuts and bolts for a little sugar and spice tonight training. So I made this training the role of planning commissioner some years back, and I'm reminiscent of some of our past planning commissioners who served on the planning commission a long time. And there was a point in time when they left. Tom Brown was one of them, and then Oh, I just saw her the other day at Eagle Bakery, another commissioner and, woman who was great. And, I quickly found that when we had new commissioners, I couldn't always rely upon, or they didn't have a kind of a perspective of their role. And this isn't me telling you what your role is, like role and responsibilities, but sharing a perspective for you to consider as you sit as a planning commissioner, making some very important decisions for our community. As I said, the city council has entrusted you with making land use and other planning decisions for our community. And so I want to help provide some context with that. Recognizing that planning commissioners make great elected officials. And the reason why is they have perspective, they have an understanding of their role, and they know how to make decisions amidst conflict. So with that, I purposely many years ago put Martin Luther King on here. I have a dream. Because I find that many planning commissioners come in with a dream or a vision, something that they're passionate about related to a community, land use, transportation, economic development, maybe it's something else. But there's some sort of, dream or vision or desire that they want. And of course, Mr. Martin Luther King Jr. was certainly that. And so I use that as inspiration because sometimes planning commissions and commissioners take on the role of, candidly, sometimes Mr. Reynolds is going a different direction than the rest of the commission. Think about Mr. Martin Luther King and how he changed our country for many years, and he did that. So I'm not saying that Mr. Shot in the head?
Yeah.
What?
He also got shot.
Yes, he did.
Yes.
He's also remembered for more than that.
Yes,
yes,
he
so-
was, but he.
So planning commissioners provide balance, and I think this is something really important. As you sit back sometimes in your chairs and you're thinking about the decision before you and the testimony that you're given, sometimes we need to provide balance within ourselves, right? Recognizing that we always have our own inherent values and perspectives and assumptions. And so sometimes we need to understand that. We need to understand what is the bigger picture? How does our personal perspectives play into the larger role of the planning commission and the community? And so that inherently provides or inspires the notion of providing balance in decision making. I'll just ask you here a question. Why did you join the planning commission? Like the three of you to share that quickly. Anyone want to start?
I think you guys already know, I said it earlier, I wanna make matters the best it can be. I'm proud of our family business and I want our employees to be able to have affordable housing. I want things to be able to come into our town for our children and have Madras be a proud town for people when they're coming through to see it. And we are proud that they're here and stopping by and enjoying our little small town, and just have it grow the right way. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you for sharing that.
I wanted to learn, I just wanted to learn more about how cities grow. I've been here 20 years and from 20 years ago, when I moved here, I heard how Madras was about ready to blow up. It was the next town to blow up. And I saw lots of people buy land, lots of people lose their butts, go bankrupt. And some people make it. And the difference between the two came down to, I guess, what they bought, where they bought, I guess their plan. And just wanted to learn how the city grows.
For me, this is Commissioner Garrett. This question brings back a story that's kind of interesting. So I had Mrs. Dunham in fifth grade where Buff Elementary is not. It was the fifth and sixth grade class, but down at the Y by McDonald's, there used to be an old ODOT station and it was an eyesore. It was before they did all that nice work down there. And she had a city beautification project that we can apply to do. And she built two raised beds, or we built two raised beds and we planted flower bulbs all over the city of Madras just to make it feel cozier. And when I moved back here, I wanted to see matters, be successful, and I wanted people to be able to live here, and just that experience of trying to find a house to buy here and having a really hard time doing it, on how much we made with professional degrees and everything, it was an eye opener, so I wanted to just help out in any way that I could.
Thank you. Commissioner Irvine, and so we just started, we're talking about the role of the planning commissioner and oftentimes the planning commissioners have a reason for serving on the planning commission. And so I've asked the three commissioners, and I'll ask yourself, why did you join the planning commission?
I joined the planning commission because I feel like, public involvement in boards and commissions is an important part of our civil duty. I picked the planning commission specifically because it was something I didn't know anything about. And I feel like when we are asked to serve on committees, sometimes that is our role, is to ask questions that an informed person wouldn't ask, because it allows a level of thinking that isn't always brought out if everybody is familiar with the topic being discussed. So yeah, I just feel like as citizens, we are called to be part of our community, and so I choose to serve here.
Well, thank you. And I have a sincere appreciation for all of your taking the time to serve our community in this regard. And I take that very seriously. So, the other aspect of the planning commissioner's role is leadership. This morning we had a joint city and county meeting. We learned last week that the large lot industrial urban growth boundary decision was approved by the state. And as Commissioner once was reflecting that sometimes decisions of that nature or planning decisions, you can get caught up in some of the details, but oftentimes we need to focus on a bigger, broader picture. And that wasn't a slight at some of the issues. It was a reflection of, if we're trying to transcend the circumstances of our community or overcome a challenge in our community or solve a problem, sometimes planning commissioners get to decide what is important and what is not in those details of that decision. So leadership and public hearings matter. We always need a strong planning commission chair, and I'll share that I've seen our current chair grow in the last 3 years, and that's been neat to see. And in almost in every case, sometimes there's concern for taking over for someone as a chair, but I'll tell you that I'll let Chair Irvine share, but in most cases the chairs find that it is something that they get to grow into and they find very valuable. As a chair, you get to be a leader, and I listened to the audio of the last planning commission meeting, and I appreciate our chair trying to facilitate a decision when there's divergent views. Oftentimes that is indication of leadership, and really finding common areas where there's conflicting interests or conflicting views is really part of that. And oftentimes I think I sit here and I see chairs, planning commission chairs, really get challenged in the sense of being active participant in a public hearing versus managing a public hearing, the commission, and finding the common area path forward. That's one of the challenges of the planning commission, but when you find that skill, boy, it can be applied in a lot of areas of life and work that we do. Part of the role of planning commissioners provide fairness in public hearings. And this is something I think is really important. We have rules, most particularly the quasi-judicial public hearing rules, and there's an order or step that we go through for those hearings. There's conflicts of interest, things that we need to pay attention to. And this is a little bit old. We used to put the rules in the back of the agenda, but I would just tell you this, and I want to commend Commissioner Reynolds. I know that there's been it seems like 2 occasions recently where he's identified a conflict of interest. And I did share with him, it seems like I recalled one time where there was a question about whether he had a conflict of interest or not, and I shared this term that some former planning director shared with me that I've never forgotten, which is when in doubt, sit it out. And the reason for that is that, remember, you are a public body. Ideally, you would want to command respect, and you're really trying to make good decisions for our community. And anything that might compromise that would probably not be in the best collective interest. So that's why I say, when in doubt, sit it out. And there's always counseled myself and the city attorney as needed. But those are small but subtle things. Think about right now, I'm not going to name any name or body, but think about a public decision that you didn't think that there was either transparency or something didn't quite add up. Something like that. That really gets back to the integrity of the decision. And the conflicts of interest or ethics requirements of planning commissioners is really trying to achieve that. And that's really what's at the heart of the matter there. Where Schaefer did a weird shape on this. Apologize, it's bottom left instead of top left. So at your public hearings, I want to spend a little more time talking about that, because oftentimes that's where I see planning commissioners either they either are a little nervous, they're somewhat comfortable, or maybe they're a little I would characterize maybe over involved and maybe not allowing others to participate. So in that spectrum, I wanted to share a couple perspectives in terms of your role. And that is, one, be prepared for the meeting, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. Staff is always available for you. We're your coach, we're your counsel, we're here to answer your questions. One thing that we have only done once here is take a collective site visit. I remember when the city in about 2009 or 10 created the cold weather shelter ordinance, which was a set of regulations that said under certain weather conditions, certain buildings can be open for the evening to allow people to shelter. And I knew that was a problem, that we had some planning commissioners that didn't have experience with our shelter system at that point in time. So we took a site visit to the old shelter there off of C Street, C and 11th. And as a sidebar, that was a great visit. It was at night, we walked down the street there, I think we maybe walked or drove, I can't remember. I remember we walked in the back door of the house. And I didn't set any of this up. I just said, hey, can we, Mr. Jim Struck, we can come and look at some experience. And
Is that done in a meeting setting?
yeah, we can do that. And we walked in, and there was a long table there with some plates of cookies. And it was the most amazing meeting, because it shared and demonstrated what they were trying to achieve and how they treat people. So not always do you need to go to a shelter and get that, kind of pull your heartstrings, but I will tell you that, it is common practice, or it is not uncommon for planning commissions to get around the conflicts of interest or ex parte contact, where they go and schedule a site visit collectively outside of a public hearing. So you don't have to disclose what Nick Sneed observed on, whatever day before the hearing. You all collectively have that.
Right, and I think we did that when we did a visit to the Tops Trailer Park when we were talking about those regulations.
Yes,
And we also
yeah,
did
yeah,
a visit
yeah.
when we were talking about multifamily.
Yeah.
Walk arounds, and I thought those were so helpful to
Yeah,
see
yeah.
kind of what the code would look like in action with someone from the city there to talk through what we were talking about. So I would welcome those happening more often, because I think they allow us to see how what we're voting on.
Yeah.
Like what it would look like going forward,
Yeah.
or who it would impact.
Yeah, if there's a desire for that mechanically, all you need to do is, as soon as you get your e-packet and go, oh boy, I really should go visit the site. Send an email to staff and see if we can schedule it before the hearing, and we can do that. Take 30 minutes, an hour, whatever it needs to be. You probably not have to spend an hour at the site, but it's really, 30-minute visit, we can talk about it. go our merry way, come back to the hearing, and we would just note that staff led a site visit, and that's it. Move on.
That was during the hearing.
No, it wouldn't be during the hearing, it'd be outside the hearing.
I mean, if you have, you can't have a forum outside the hearing, right? Like if we were to run into or meet up there, it'd have to be.
So we would notice it, we would notice it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in both of those cases, there actually was a community member present, so
Yeah.
they chose to participate, which actually added to the event.
So, that's possible. So being prepared is important. I would also coach you and say that part of your role is to ask staff, or pardon me, tell staff what you need. And this is something that sometimes can take a little courage, or for some that may not have the confidence, asking for help or telling what you don't understand can be challenging, but from a staff perspective, we always love it. And the reason for that is, now I know what your concerns about, what your questions are, then I can start to assess about what your needs and challenges, what your concerns are about a decision. Then we can help better answer the questions you might have as it relates to that decision. Again, we're here to help you. I don't make the decisions, you do. So I'm here to help you. If we need to provide more handouts, that's something we can do. Like any meeting, in some regards, in planning commission, you really don't get to say what time you're going to end, but I think that the point here is, generally speaking, start on time if you can. I'll say it again a few times here throughout. When you see people sitting in the audience, you just need to remember, it's very likely it's their first time coming to the planning commission. Very few people come out of the womb and say, I love to speak and talk in public. And so even though you're community members, it's scary to them, right? They don't understand the process at minimum, and then they're in a different place. And so, making them feel welcome is important. And then it's like I planned this out, being friendly is important. Again, so as a chair, I've seen some of chairs and including Chair Irvin explain. Mr. Reynolds, would you please come up? Could you please come and sit down? Take your time. Please state your name. We'll take your comments. Or now is the time when anyone is opposed to it. This is the time you get to come up. Would you please consider coming up? So it's those extra tips because they don't know what to expect. Even if they submitted a letter. Well, if I submit a letter, does that mean I can come up and share what I said in the letter? Maybe something different. All that stuff, right? So it's just being friendly. And what that does over time is it builds rapport. And I also think that it builds citizen involvement. And unfortunately, some of our greatest decisions bring out the most people in our community for public involvement. And then even the large lot industrial stuff and marijuana. There wasn't that many people here. It was like 40 people in some of these cases. That's not that many people for a community of 8,000. So, by being friendly and welcoming and helping people through the process builds a rapport and helps them understand. We did have a planning commissioner. I'll have to research this in the back. I can't believe I forgot her name. It's Lizzie Hessel's mother. If you can remember that name, please share it. But yeah, that's right. Lynn Cowlesky, yes. Yeah, and she, God bless her, I saw her the other day at Eagle Bakery, it was great, and I gave her a big hug. Because she served our community, just like you, never forget that. And she always said, Nick, please do not ever use acronyms. She didn't like that, she couldn't keep track of them, didn't know what it meant, so I didn't. Although we did one, we were doing a planning commissioner training on the transportation system plan, and I asked her, can we just use that for one night? Can I just say TSP? And she allowed me to do that. So again, those are things that are problems for the average person coming in that doesn't work in planning. They don't know what a TSP is and all, these acronyms. So avoidance of that helps people understand the decision or what's being discussed about. Communication, I think, is really important. So one of the things that I do and struggle mightily at it just because planning is technical in nature, but I always try to write it at eighth grade level. And I'll share with you that one of the things that what tools I'm using now is Grammarly. And oftentimes I'm trying to utilize that to make it clearer and simpler terminology. In some cases, you can't avoid it where you're dealing with, transportation stuff, number of vehicles and SECs and impacts and all these sorts of things. Maybe it's wastewater terminology. You can't do it, but when we talk in the planning commission hearings, when we ask these questions, we can ask the question, what does this mean? Explain it to me like I didn't know this. Make it a little more simple for me. Oftentimes, what I see is human behavior is we don't understand complex situations. So the default is to try to simplify it so we can form an opinion and understand it better. But oftentimes that also then allows us to start expanding and understand the nuance and complexities of it. And so as a planning commission, you can start to ask for more simpler terms and then help expand the knowledge and understanding into more of the nuance. Great opportunity there. Oftentimes, we'll get, I shouldn't say often, we don't often get community members that come up will speak just to speak to the planning commission. That actually does exist in other communities. We'll just come up and share about things that don't matter. And so sometimes we need to focus either yourselves or people speaking to you on the matter at hand or the relevant issues of that. And that's, I guess, in the sense of being friendly, you always want to be respectful. They spent the time to come here, but on the other hand, you are conducting business, right? And there's a balance there. Be respectful, rational, and professional. I think we do a pretty good job of this. I'm not aware of any case where it's not, but I think it's just a good awareness. We don't have disruptive behavior yet. I hope that's something that maintained. I would say to you that something that the chair and the commission gets to do is to establish a kind of decorum of the room. And something that happens from time to time is you'll have audience members speak from the chairs, right? And, it's not about a respect, it's about an order. And, when you're sitting at the lectern, you get to speak, right? Well, no one else behind you should be speaking. And so that also helps you manage your public process, that everyone gets a turn. Everyone gets a chance to say whatever you need to say. So sometimes that can be disruptive. That is something you want to be aware of and part of your role for managing those hearings. And I would also say for our vice chair and other commissioners, when you see that, sometimes your chair is focusing on completely different issues.
So what is protocol for something like that would happen?
The protocol will be, thank you for your comments. If you please just wait a minute, we will provide you the opportunity to speak to the commission. And so please give us a minute to this testimony finish up, and then we will call you up and you can share your comments with us.
See that more happening with people asking questions.
Yep.
Yeah. And I do think it's somewhat awkward because sometimes if it's a quick thing, you can just be like, but if it's a long comment or something like that, so I do feel like in a way I would try to use discretion, but two, it is very distracting if there's lots of people in here.
Yeah.
So two, it depends on the meeting. If the one person in the audience is the one that's asking the question, that's
Yeah.
different than if we have a full house.
Yeah, I also think, again, you gotta kind of manage the risk of the situation. So if you got 40 people in here and one or two people start doing that, and you got a person at the lectern providing you testimony, and then all of a sudden people start talking from the back to the commission, and you don't, guide them that that's not okay, and that there is a kind of an order here, then you better be prepared for otherwise, and that's not so good. That can be challenging in managing that hearing, right? There's a reason why we have the order here, so, yeah. You're shaking your head, Commissioner.
Yeah, I remember that. That was fun.
Yeah.
That was.
Yeah, so this is just awareness, right? So we want to just share some perspectives with you. Equity, not in the DEI sense. This was created before the formal DEI, I think, kind of movement in our nation or whatever. But in the sense of opportunity and predictability, consistency. So announcing the procedures, how you're going to go through this process. Okay, we got a public hearing tonight, And at the end of it, we're gonna make a decision, but we're gonna go through these steps and everyone's gonna have an opportunity. Whether you want, you know, you can speak to the commission. You know, there's gonna be some parameters for that, but it's not just come up whenever you want, or it's you know, not showing respect to others, including people in the audience. We're gonna have some general procedure here. Again, I think one of the best things that you can do is be friendly. You can be fair and you can be trustworthy. And if you're making decisions and holding hearings in that regard, that's a sign of a great planning commission. And then decision making, kind of wrapping up on this aspect, you know, just you do make decisions and they are important. I think they're important because when I leave a planning commission, I know the planning commission decided this. That's important. We're moving forward in some direction, right? Maybe it's we're finalizing and issuing a decision for a permit for a developer. Maybe it's we're going on to the city council and saying, this is what the planning commission recommended to you. And I can show you staff reports where we do report the actual recommendation that you made to the city council. And again, as I said earlier, the city council has entrusted you to focus and specialize and spend time to make planning decisions in the best interest of our community. That's why that recommendation matters, right? And I don't know if even in the last 3 to 5 years, I don't know of a situation, but maybe once or twice, where the city council has gone a completely different direction than the planning commission. And what that implies is when you spend the time working on these tough decisions and it goes to the city council, they've got to trust that you've spent that time, you've been through a public process, you've considered it and made a good decision. And so what is good decisions? And I think this is more of a theoretical decision or a conversation. And I think Cliff would probably appreciate that is that, you know, what is a good decision? I use the word good on purpose because it's subject to interpretation, right? It's how you define that. Later, we're going to talk about the criteria for a land use decision. A good decision, maybe it's consistent with law. Maybe it's consistent with our, you know, comprehensive planning policies regarding, you know, economic development.
I would almost go, it's like a fishing growth that goes unobserved because nobody notices it because it's so fluid. I mean, it's just, that makes sense, that's the route it should have gone. And nobody notices because the whole concept of, or the whole idea of what needs to be there is there. The zoning is correct. The allocation of land, of funds, of whatever needs to be there. It goes without saying that just is fluid in its process.
So hearing you say that reminds me of transparency.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the term shared understanding, where everyone has an understanding of circumstances or the decision. All very good, all very good. Sometimes we need to think about unintended consequences, or, you know, in economic terms, we call these externalities, you know, that often, I think planning commissions do a great job on this. And I'll recall former mayor and planning commissioner Joe Krenowitz. I remember in about 2017 when we were working on some code changes for the industrial zone, and pardon me, it was that and a slew of other kind of what we would call administrative changes. They're not big policy issues, but needed code changes. And he said, you know, we've worked on this for 6 meetings. I think we need to remember the 90-10. Let's get it right. The 90-10 rule. Get it 90% right. The best we can, get 90% there. Because that last 10%, we're going to spend just as much time on that as we did to get into 90%. And the reality is that planning commissions, when you are making plans and changing regulations and process, things like that, you always get to change them. Whether staff identifies the need for it, maybe it's even you identified to make a change because something's you've identified a problem. You get to figure out what you get to go back and make those changes. So good decisions, I think, also are largely correct. They're not perfect. Perfect, in my mind, is something I create up here. It's oftentimes not reality. So you got to balance what it is you're working on and how much more work you need to work on that. Planning technically is an art and a science. Depending on the school, it's either in your bachelor's of science or an arts degree, and I think the reality is it's both. From a scientific perspective, it's data, it's methods, it's analysis, conclusion, rationality, making decisions. The art is, the stuff that you can't necessarily quantify. It's intuition, it's a belief, it's a value. It's those sorts of things where we, in our comprehensive plan, say we value natural hazards and we want to protect our community from wildfire. We've got generally a basis to say there is some wildfire risk, but you know what? We still think that, managing the wildland interface is important for our community. Make sure we don't lose property or life. And so that's where some of the art and intuition comes in. I think that's all very, very important. As much as I'd say, going back to the housing action plan tonight, as much as we've gone through this analysis, not quite the A plus B plus C divided by this and, come out and we get this answer that says how many houses we need. There is a bit of art to it in the sense that in some regards, the numbers confirm what many know, right? Or the intuition or your understanding of the community. You oftentimes will never see a situation where you have perfect data that perfectly articulates a position or a direction on a matter. And so you always have to use some intuition. Communication, I think, is something that I think candidly and respectfully the planning commission can improve upon a bit. I made up this statement many years ago, and that is what is not said goes unsaid and not understood. And going back to the principle of shared understanding and transparency that Commissioner Reynolds was alluding to, when you go through a public hearing, you get all this information and then you deliberate, and then someone says, I move to, approve this or do whatever, and that motion passes. You actually haven't deliberated. You haven't externalized your analysis of the facts, of the circumstances that lead you to a position of, I am supportive of this. I believe it's consistent with the criteria or whatever the basis of that decision is. And so, and many times I would coach you, just because you sit there and you think you know what's going on, oftentimes the people out in the audience, or when you read the minutes afterwards, don't understand what is going on up here. So you need to externalize that. And I think that builds the transparency and the understanding of the decision, particularly when you have conflicting views on it, when you have opponents.
So are you suggesting that after a motion is made, that especially if it is going to be controversial or there has been many meetings on the topic, that commissioners specifically talk about what they may or may not vote for? Or because I feel like we do a pretty good job of at least talking through the motion, or not the motion, but whatever topic it is. But I don't think that we articulate why we would vote yes or no.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and so it can either happen before the motion, so definitely during the deliberation component of your hearing, right? And that's really just your assessment of the facts, like, okay, the standard is this. There's information in the record that supports that. Our plan, our comprehensive plan says this, we need more housing, and so the developer or this applicant has proposed this, and it is consistent with that in these ways, right? It could be so simple as, I generally agree with this. We do not have testimony in opposition. I'm going to support it. By just saying there isn't any opposition, that means that you don't have evidence in the record to support a different or alternative view. That's just as important, right? So I think explaining that a bit more, because every single one of you comes from a different place and different values and a set of assumptions and view things differently. And that's inherently important in these decisions. That's why there's planning commissioners, plural, more than one, So when you make a decision, the more you can explain what it is that you're seeing and why you may vote in a particular manner, that creates the shared understanding and transparency, and people understand why you made that decision. And I think that builds trust in the community and of course, credibility of the planning commission. Thankfully, we haven't had too many decisions where, and I don't remember any where people go, that planning commission just flagged got that wrong. That doesn't happen that often.
There'd have to be somebody here for somebody that's.
Yeah.
Tree falls on the forest.
Yeah. Yes. Understood that. So, one last thing I'll say to you, and this is, something I use in a lot of different aspects of my work, is this idea of leaving a cookie on the table. So, you know, I have my daughters, they love cookies, and they've now figured out where to go get the step stool next to the dryer, and they go in the pantry, and all the way up, they'll find mom's Oreos, and then they'll pack those in the lunch. And so, you know, it's always upsetting when someone just takes all the Oreos and there's none left, but leaves it in the pantry. So this idea is, you know, you oftentimes will likely know or have a good understanding of a decision. But asking a couple of questions of people, or maybe your fellow commissioners, to let them work on it, to wrestle with it, helps build involvement. So oftentimes, the way I use this in my work with the planning commission is, I do the absolute best job I can to make sure a proposal that comes to you meets all the criteria. I do try to summarize it. I could go through the entire staff report, right? But I always leave a couple things out. And purposely so. One, I, in some cases, will know if you've read it or not. And that's not a criticism, but it helps me understand what level of support I may need to be giving the commission during a hearing. We all have our lives that go on. Can't do that. Also, sometimes I think the planning commission needs to own a decision. And if I create the perfect proposal for you, sometimes there isn't ownership of that decision. And so a small tweak at the end oftentimes can allow a commission or decision-making body to go, you know what? That was pretty good, but I like that last little tweak. And I think we really made a good decision on it. That's the cookie on the table that you get to chew on and wrestle with and put your thumbprints on, and make a good decision. And this oftentimes isn't really in a development permit or subdivision or site plan kind of situation, but it's more or less on the policy level where you're setting policy for a community. With that said, you know, I appreciate this. I shared Chair Irvine that I wanted to do this training for a little more than 45 minutes now, but I did want to blend a little sugar and spice or kind of aspirational with a little bit of nuts and bolts to help the commissioners get to a place where you may be a little more effective in your public hearings. Bethany, would you help me pass these out real quick? So I want to, while she's passing those out, questions, comments on the role of planning commission.
So I got one procedurally. Really?
Well, I can't hear you.
Oh, hello. So tonight's approval, since city council has already approved it, what was the point?
The point was,
What was us already approving something that's already been approved?
the point was, I feel it's very important that the planning commission approve it, regardless of the order, and that's.
You feel it was very important?
Oh, absolutely.
Procedurally, what was important about it then? I mean.
Well, I didn't say procedural. I think that it's important for the planning commission to make a formal decision of whatever that was on the housing action plan.
Even though a formal decision has already been made at city council.
Yes, I do believe that's important. The sequencing was out of order. This has never happened before. It's imperfect. But I do believe, and the reason for that is in probably 6 to 8 months, I'm going to bring back to you a code amendment proposal. It's going to be identified in the housing action plan. And for me, I don't want to bring a proposal to you that you didn't weigh in on. If you denied the plan, well, that's important too. Because that proposal, I do need to make a better case for as to why it's needed. Conversely, it's in the housing action plan. There's a level of understanding, a level of support intuition as to why that is needed. It doesn't mean I just get to bring it to you and you approve it because it's in the housing action plan. Oh, there's way more to it than that.
So what if we denied the plan tonight, denied the approval?
So that does happen often. So planning commissions, not in this city.
And then overridden and approved by city council.
Yes, so it is common that in public decisions at cities, even counties, where a planning commission or an advisory body will make a recommendation to the elected officials and will say, yeah, I disagree with that.
But tonight wasn't a recommendation, it was actually approval. right?
Yes, yeah.
We
Yeah.
did not recommend, we approved.
so that is important. Ultimately, they are elected officials and they make the ultimate decision for the city, but for planning purposes, I think it's important for the planning commission to make a decision on it, regardless of what that. I came in thinking, regardless of what they decide, it's important for them to take a position on it. So, okay, any other questions? All right, I'm speeding through because I'm trying to be respectful of your time in the evening. And I try to make these quick or less than an hour, otherwise your attention goes away, including mine. So this is a conditional use and site plan proposal that the city reviewed in 2021. And this is the staff report, that really the cover kind of letter. And this is intended to, number one, tell you, generally speaking, what is this thing? What corner of the earth is this located? What type of decision? What are the issues here? And so, again, what we try to do here is one, identify the date of the agenda item. Why is that? Well, we need record of that. It seems simple, but it does matter. Who the planner is, who wrote the decision, that is important. If it's a associate planner, director, we identify the file numbers because every single decision has a related file number, so we can reference that. That's helpful. And we do identify the decision type. And so we have type 1, 2, 3, and 4 decisions, and those have different processes associated with them. I will note that type 1 and 2, the planning commission doesn't review, which is type 3 and 4, the quasi judicial and legislative decisions. So the purpose of this staff report, I always try to provide a quick overview, remembering that sometimes life happens and you do need to show up and you do need to review this really quickly. And so this is intended to be reviewed in about 5 to 10 minutes or less, maybe 1 to 2 minutes ideally. And then you can hop into a hearing and start, get a staff report. You can start accepting testimony and you can participate. It is not intended to be detailed and explain every single detail. That's for the findings and decision. I'll show you that in just a minute. But some of the things we always try to include is 120-day clock. So if it's a quasi judicial decision, those decisions by state law are required to be made and final within 120 days. The unique part of the Oregon land use system. So developers have predictability of when a decision be made. There are other places in the United States where there isn't a deadline. And so imagine you're a developer and the city just holds you up in perpetuity or whatever without any explanation. So that's the purpose of that. Notices, we always, there's probably some circumstances where we haven't, or it just really wasn't even in question. But we always try to identify the notices are issued to demonstrate compliance. We've met all the notice requirements of the procedures of that application. So that's just a document. And I think it's a good double check for the planning commission. Did you provide notice to adjacent property owners? Did you publish in the newspaper? Was it published on the website, et cetera? All those sorts of things are important because why would you hold a public hearing if it wasn't noticed? At that point, no one knows you're accepting public testimony. Oh, no one testified in support or opposed to it. I guess they're supportive of it. Oh, well, yeah, because you didn't notify it. So what assurance do you have that the necessary people that are entitled notice have been given notice? And then if they don't show up, why then apparently there's not much concern over that. See this relationship?
Yeah, so I guess I have a question because we have had a hearing in the last year or so that the notice was maybe written in a way that caused some problems.
Confusion?
And I'm thinking back to just a little bit earlier that there was some comments about, writing and talking to 8th graders. Great. And sometimes I feel like when I do see the notice comments, that it's not very clear, it's written more technically. And so I'm wondering if there's a way that our notices can be. I know that there's requirements, but it does seem that sometimes the notices are very technical and people are like, what is this about?
Yeah. I would admit that. So there's a couple different factors. One is we need to meet the legal requirement. Two, remember, we do pay by the line for these notices. And every one of these notices now is about $300 to $400. Okay, so we're trying to be sufficiently clear but also concise. Could we do better? Oh yeah, we could do better. But I also think that to remember, it's published in the newspaper. But everyone within, if it requires judicial, it's all the property owners within 250 feet of that property from the boundary of it get notice as well. So it may be the same notice, but if they're confused, there's always the contact information. So we've got multiple ways. Now, whether they understand it or not, you know, it's really up to them, but point well taken, we can always do better. On the other hand, I would say, you know, we do try to balance this, and you know, we get questions from the public, not as much as candidly I would like, because I don't think property owners really understand it. I mean, there's some people who, well, let me just say this, part of my perspective on local government and civic involvement is that for whatever reason, there's just a lack of interest to participate for a lot of different reasons. And if, to your point, if people understand, more likely to participate. But on the other hand, people don't care in some places as well, right? So it's a challenge for us. If we've got issues, I'm reading on page 2 here, we try to summarize the issues for you. So if we've got comments that were submitted into the record, you know, letters, emails, phone calls, before the hearing, we're going to try to summarize that for you. So you have a flavor of what might be coming to you. Is it like, oh, this thing's terrible, you know, and that'll be in the packet of information you get as well, right? So you'll be able to review that. So we're just summarizing it so you have a flavor of what's going on there. We do reference the applicable criteria and try to summarize that it's either met it, not, or, you know, it can be met with conditions of approval. In this section right here, you should be looking for, oh my gosh, this thing doesn't even come close. And you know, we don't usually have that because oftentimes staff will call the applicant and say, you're missing this information, you need to revise your plan, or, you know, something else to help them get to a place of compliance. So some cities, they just don't do that, and you know, the planning commission will recommending denial because they didn't submit the information or not sufficiently clear. I don't think that's helpful. I don't think that builds trust, transparency, and also effective governance. So we usually don't do that. Commissioner Garrett?
So typically, most of the things brought to us, you guys have vetted and you're seeking our approval.
Yes.
Because it met the criteria.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So an application gets filed. We, in most cases, do a completeness review, make sure we've got information that allows us to make a determination, not a determination of compliance, but a determination of yes or no, of whether the standards have been met or not. So, for example, did they submit a traffic impact analysis? Yes. That's all we get to determine during the completeness review. Whether the traffic impact analysis is correct, the methodology, all that other stuff, that's for the decision. We get to work with other people to help sort that out. But do we have a factual basis to make a decision? Imagine you're going to work on a site plan for a new development downtown that was 5 stories, right? At least that's what the documentation they submitted, the narrative. But their actual plan just showed a map of the property, but they didn't include any elevations of it. So how do you know it's actually 5 stories? They said it's 5, but what does the elevation look like? What do the materials look like in that building? They meet your material standards? So it's that sort of thing. Do we have information to demonstrate, oh yeah, it's clearly a five-story building, and we know what materials they're proposing on this, and then we can then go and review it for compliance. Yeah. Okay, so Bethany has on the screen here, this is the decision that was issued by staff and I can't remember how it says administrator, I think that's a typo, but so this is Bethany helped me here, 52 pages. So the only reason you need to be reading 52 pages is if you're struggling with insomnia. There is a strategy for reviewing these and oftentimes it for some of you, you know, it's kind of like reading a newspaper article or cruising through a newspaper. You read the headlines first, and then if it's interesting, then I read the story. Well, it's a very similar kind of approach to this. So the first page is a lot of the technical information that gives you a quick snapshot of this project. Who the applicant and property owner is. What the status of the 120-day clock is. In other words, are you getting this decision on day 119 and you have to make a decision and hope that it's not appealed? Because if it is appealed, you're gonna be in violation with the clock and need to get an extension from the applicant. That's a big deal for you. You're the decision maker. So we try to establish very clearly that this one was on day 57 of 120. We got plenty of time. So if you need to continue a hearing, you got plenty of time to do that. The location of the property is super important. You'll see later on, we try to provide some maps to give you a better idea of where that's at, but at least we establish that factual basis. The zoning of the property, we try to summarize the request, the type of decision, whether it's type 1, type 2, or otherwise, the file numbers, and then the staff review. Okay, just some basic information real quick, and then we continue on with that. Thank you, Bethany. So one important component of a land use decision is you need to identify the criteria. So getting back to Chair Irvine's concerns about the notice, one of the things that I think is challenging about notice is we identify the criteria in there. And how many people know what the criteria or what section 18.30 is in the city's development code? Not many people, but we do need to identify the standards by which the decision is going to be made. Why? Because someone may say you are applying criteria that should not apply to the decision. Conversely, they could say, you forgot to consider this other criteria. Imagine we made a decision on a 300 lot subdivision and we didn't consider the traffic impact analysis standards in our development code, and we didn't consider any of the traffic. So this is a statement right here of the applicable criteria to make sure that we've done that. Now, do we expect you to analyze this and go, hey, you forgot something? No. But do we expect you to ask a question like, hey, have you guys reviewed the traffic on this? And as a public works director reviewed? Yes. Yes, we have. We have a traffic impact analysis, there's comments in the record, there's some changes needed. And that should be a general indicator to the commission and the public that we have that information and that analysis being done. You can rely upon the public. Then we do provide a quick summary of where this property is at the map, right? We do some review of the zoning of the subject property, identify that, take a snapshot of the city zoning map. And then surrounding uses, sometimes this can be important. We've tried to move to more of a table format on this, so there's not so many words, you can quickly review it. But imagine you were going to have, let's get crazy here, a rubber tire manufacturing plant on one property, and directly adjacent to that was a large child care facility and a school and a bunch of housing next to it. You'd want to know that, wouldn't you? Yeah. And so that's where this can be important right here. Okay. The proposal again is restated. The exhibits is more important. So this is, I think I want to call out a change that when I first started and to where we're at now, we just referenced information in the file or the record when I first came here. Then we started identifying the exhibits. So exhibit 1 is the application and supporting information. Then we said, oh no, we're going to issue a decision. We're actually going to include those in the decision. So technically, this document is 52 pages plus exhibits 1 through 6. It should be more pages. And so the value of this is, it's more administrative, is that when you hand a decision to someone, they have every single exhibit in it and stands alone. right? On appeal, I personally learned this on the large lot industrial, what information we did and did not have in the record. That decision, you find that out, but with this particular method, it's more likely to stand on its own. You make sure that, if it's appealed, you've got that information in the record. So then we start going through the criteria, and I would say to you this, please don't read this unless A, you have lots of time, you are super concerned about every aspect of it. And or maybe can't prioritize your concerns or don't have a specific concern. So this is where I think you get to, maybe not read the details of the story, but read the headlines, okay? In the sense that, if staff in the staff report is making a recommendation to approval because we believe the criteria are met, and you are okay with that after reading some or all of this decision, great. Maybe you have some additional concerns about traffic. Maybe there's an intersection that has been a problem, it's creates some accidents, or it's unsafe, or needs to be improved. And you really want to make sure that it's been analyzed, or why it hasn't been analyzed and considered in this decision. Then you might go in here and start reading some of those details here.
Yeah, I think, that's when we keep our page through a couple, but sometimes when we know that it's gonna be maybe a controversial topic, I like to look at the condition of approval paragraphs, because that tells me where the city has found possibly something that maybe that might not be in agreement.
Yeah.
And usually when there's a motion, it includes those conditions of approvals as part of our approval process. And sometimes those are the areas where maybe there's some questions about whether the applicant has their own questions, or does this criteria really apply? So if I want to spend time, that's where I start. If something has like a million different conditions of approval, it's telling me that there's lots of things.
Lots of details missing. It's a great strategy.
Yeah.
And so, in college, you get these research papers that I had to review from time to time. You read the abstract and you go to the end, right? And then you look at the methods, and then you start reading all the details. That's kind of a similar strategy here. For the findings, if you want to look at the detailed findings, it's probably the last resort, because there's probably other ways of getting that information more efficiently. So, so these are the findings, and there's lots of them. We aren't going to go through those. That's not really the purpose here. We're trying to save time. So, Bethany, do you want to scroll down to the conditions of approval? So if you were to read the first several pages and then go to the end, we can look at the conditions of approval, which says the applicant shall comply with the conditions of approval as identified herein of this land use decision, noting the file number, and so here are the conditions, and we numerically index those on purpose, because how do you refer to a condition of approval with a applicant, or 10 years from now when you have some attorney that is involved in the property, they don't understand it? Oh, it's condition of approval number 5. Oh, easy, great, we can all start moving from that. Very simple, but very and subtle thing, but super important. So you can scan through this, and these, in effect, as Commissioner our chair said, these are the areas that you need action on from the applicant to make sure that they've met all of your criteria. In other words, if you didn't have conditions of approval, you would either likely be denying it, or they've met all your standards, there's no need for it. In most cases, you're going to have conditions of approval. And the reason for that is, candidly, not for compliance to the criteria, but there's other things in there we put in as conditions to make sure that they do certain things in a certain sequence, to make sure that they get through the process and you don't have any oopsies, okay? So they need to, in some cases, and it's kind of a thing of the past, but, submit a report to the fire department demonstrating that the fire truck can, meets the fire standards for the apparatus access standard, things like that. They need to obtain a building permit. Yes, obviously that's a requirement, but if they don't, and you don't have the condition of approval, it strengthens our position for enforcement, right? So it helps guide the applicants or the developers along the way as well. So, okay, So that's a quick overview of staff reports and the findings and decisions and how to utilize the two and work together. Again, we're trying to provide you a lot of information, utilize it in a lot of different ways, but also access and understand it quickly. And then you get to decide how deep you want to go into the wormholes of the decision. Again, I will just let you know, again, I'm here to support you. We're here to help you make good decisions. And so if anything is unclear, whether you think it's a super question, simple question, should know it, I don't care, ask the question, we're here to help, right? It's a phone call, it's an email, we can meet over coffee, whatever that is, I'm happy to travel wherever you are, or wherever it's convenient and discuss it. So, again, we're supporting you. And so if you've got questions, you aren't prepared for a meeting, you have someone to help you on.
I would say that already, I did not know that the days of the clock was at the front of that. So
Yeah.
that's very helpful.
I do have a stupid question.
Great, love it.
Let's say that tire factory, meets all the land use requirements, but us as a commission realize it's very bad to place next to an elementary school and a housing development.
Yeah.
But it's met traffic criteria, like zoning.
Mhm.
And
So-
still vote, or what would we do then?
So, my advice to you in that situation would be, number one, identify the concern early on. As soon as you get the packet or notice of it, you identify, call me. Because when we sit here in the hearing and you identify that problem, I'm then going to be analyzing the criteria to figure out which of those criteria can I now modify the finding such that now we have a problem and then either require a condition of approval or now find a strong basis for denial. We could also continue the public hearing. Maybe it's, I have concerns. You express your concern to the applicant and those attending the hearing that you have concern about this. You're not ready to make a decision on it, so you continue it. That's good cover and good code of saying, staff, we need some help. How can we get there? So then we work with our attorney or otherwise other people that can help us out, figure out a way to resolve that problem. But I think that the one thing I would say is critical is identify the concern early on. Because sometimes the simple concerns can be big concerns if maybe staff's met it, or maybe the applicant hasn't told us all the information. Staff thinks it's an easy, there's compliance there, but because there's more information to be understood, all of a sudden it's now a big issue.
Yeah, but what is that? Here factory brings 800 well-paying jobs to town. You know, that, again, this is the whole caveat of the planning commission.
So we're gonna talk about how you make land use decisions. Okay?
Yeah.
I wanna talk a lot about that in our future training, and that's something that's super important, right? Because it provides predictability and transparency and understanding of how decisions are being made. And, the unfortunate reality is, you may have a situation where that comes up. But I don't know of a situation where I've seen that. It's very rare.
You kind of hope that zoning helps.
Yeah,
with
so
that.
oftentimes, I mean, this is part of my training and the value of me being here for quite a long time is I understand what the community is looking for and what likely is going to be a problem. And most of the decisions that you are going to make requires the applicant to attend what we call a pre-app meeting or pre-application meeting. A meeting that they attend, we discuss the nature of the proposal, and we provide comments before they formally apply. And the idea is to coach them up on the criteria and how to tweak their proposal. So they're more likely to get an approval. And that's really the issue here, what people are trying to do. And so I understand what likely is going to be a problem. So I'll recall back 2014, I think it was 15. I should go back. We had a guy come in. Let's just say that I got asked to come up and speak with him because he wanted to open a juice bar in town. Interesting. well, why do you really need to come talk with me about a juice bar? Oh, oh, he's out of the area, okay, so you need help him, so. Guy comes in and. He,
Strip club.
he brings a woman with him that doesn't appear related and but is a business partner. And long story short is a strip club
Oh.
right across from, now the El Torino Market or,
Where?
El Torino Market. And, so we identified some concerns about that, not on the, so first of all, you gotta understand, the United States Constitution. Freedom of speech here, and the Oregon Constitution provides more protections than the US Constitution. And that is an expression of freedom of speech. So when we express concerns about this, for these legally referred to as sexually oriented businesses, I'm identifying concerns about land use. I'm trying to stay completely out of the judgment or analysis related to the nature of the business, but really about how it affects our codes, right? Well, okay, what type of juice are you serving? Okay, well, you're gonna have to talk with the health. So have you talked with the environmental health department, because you're gonna have to get a permit, it's gonna be like a restaurant, right? So I'm getting, identifying all these issues. That only happened once, and God help me, that only happens just once, but those are really challenging. It's obviously not the tire factory, but you can imagine, let's just say, so that would likely be a type 2 decision, which is a staff decision. Oh, but it gets appealed, and guess who gets to hear the appeal? You do.
Sweet.
So in those regards, we're trying to really, be helping them understand the issues. We don't get projects very often. We're like, oh my God, you can't do that. We had one, seems like it was this week, the shipping container guy. Yeah, I got a guy who wants to, use shipping containers for housing because it's really economic. I'm like, no, they're gonna have, so I didn't say no, but I said, oh, you're gonna have, looks like you're gonna have a difficult time meeting our design standards.
Can you just say, no, you're dumb?
No.
Okay.
No, come on. So that's how we handle that, identify early on. But staff also tries to coach applicants up. So if we legitimately think there's gonna be a problem, we identify that. And we say you need to be prepared likely for an appeal.
Did the guy have like a gold chain and his chest hair was gonna talk?
No, he had a very, very, very raspy and loud voice, like he was part of a 1980s hair rock band. And, he was probably in his 40s or 50s, and she was fairly young. Yeah. Anyhow,
Fun.
any other questions?
That was so much fun.
Yeah.
I mean, just to hear them and their explanation as to, why it was needed. How they plan to better the community.
Jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah, job pursuit happiness.
Okay, that about wraps up what I had to share with you this evening. Was this generally helpful? Okay.
Yeah, I think so. I think especially going through that part and talking about, the planning itself, but I think also talking a little bit about running efficient meetings and things is helpful.
Yeah, again, these are just guiding, coaching things, I think it's important for all of you commissioners to be aware of how we run meetings, because, eventually, Chair Urban, she's gonna be, board of commissioners, she's not gonna be here anymore, so we need someone to step up, and so, you'll need to generate. I'm making this up, I'm completely making this. So but the point is that if you don't have awareness of these issues, it's hard to either step in the role or help the chair out. Thank you all for your service. What I'd like to do in the next meeting is focus on types of decisions and how you make those decisions, some of the nuance on that, and we'll just go from there.
I didn't read these.
When is our next meeting?
18th, June 18th.
June 18th.
Okay, I will not be in time.
Okay. What do we have on the agenda?
Nothing. Journey.
Oh, yeah, okay. Great, so there's no formal business, what we'd like to do, maybe an hour of training, you can schedule that training, doesn't have to be at 6:30, you know, be early, later. I mean, just throwing that out there, but it would
Would you have to be here?
ideally,
Okay,
I mean, is there an alternate?
why don't we, like, go out to dinner or something?
I think probably in here would be better just working with the materials and things like. Can we provide you dinner? That's a,
Can you?
actually,
I don't
unfortunately
think so,
now.
no.
Did you guys hear about the Oregon Ethics Commission?
Yeah.
Did you- Yeah,
I
did you-
mean, you have to sign up for it.
no. That does exist, that requirement, but. 2 weeks ago, the Oregon Ethics Commission just ruled that it is no longer ethical to provide elected officials a meal at a meeting, appointed officials, even staff.
No,
And even coffee was noted that is no longer for state.
I drank it.
Apparently, yeah, exactly.
All teachers are gonna quit across the state.
Oh.
That's how they're gonna do.
Well, so this is, I think, the city manager said that, the cities across the region are developing a memo that will allow us to do this, again, but.
It's because we have secretaries.
Like the idea of de minimis benefit, like, I mean.
Well, I'm not there even, I look at it as, you're highly paid. You obviously on the night it's 78 degrees outside with a nice breeze have many other things you could be doing with your family and friends in Central Oregon. Couldn't it be nice if we just provide you a light meal or snack or, some basic nutrition so you can function in a meeting, let's be honest, and.
What if it's gifted by Ashlyn's mom?
Yeah.
That's even a little bit different, I don't know, but so.
Like even if
I'm not tracking this. I am not tracking this. I'll be clear on this.
So, yeah, we don't report, like, first thing about planning commission, we don't talk about planning commission. There's-
I think you're confusing the planning commission with Vegas, and that's not something that needs to be confused,
Fight
but. At any rate, if you guys wanted a light meal, we might be able to find a way to do that if you wanted to do it earlier. That's one of the values of having a 6:30, you have a little more time to get a meal or whatever, so. But the 18th, unless so the problem with June and July and August is, yeah, exactly, you guys are volunteers. So I would rather candidly do a training on the 18th. Maybe in the second meeting in July and kind of wrap up some basic training for you. August is out. I mean, we literally try not to schedule hearings for the same reasons you do. I mean, unless we have to, we will. But, we try to respect your time in the summer and freedom here, so.
And.
Yeah, let's not do it.
Okay,
I mean, I can do it.
Yeah.
okay, we could also do a special meeting, so there, maybe an alternative.
I can send out dates.
Is there anything scheduled?
No, it would just be like 1 hour training. So we could do, why don't we do this? We could have Bethany send out some potential dates. Identify what may be available and see what can work from there. But as we kind of enter the summer season and whatnot, we just know that we do try to not schedule public hearings in July. Especially the first meeting in July being around the 4th of July. I mean, again, I tend to wear the Captain Obvious hat more often than not, but just being clear that we try to respect your time and holiday and things like that.
We do have one for the 17th of July,
Okay, we do have a hearing on the 17th of July. Which one's that?
Stone Oak.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay, yeah, so
Oh, yeah, 16th, sorry.
16, yeah. So we could do that. That should be a fairly straightforward hearing, famous last words. But we could do, a bit of training, kind of like we did here.
So Garrett is gone then, I can be here at 16. I'm here the 16.
And
Is that too far out for you, Cliff? Yeah.
That's fair.
I know I have some.
Is your,
Huh?
Okay.
No, not even if you provide.
Well, so is it a hard no? Is it you don't know, or?
It's, how about it's a. Let's say 95% now.
Okay, so what that means is for the July 17th hearing, Bethany, we do need to make sure that. What commissioners can be there, especially Commissioner Kendall.
Mhm.
She'll be pivotal.
Yeah.
Will Chair or Vice Chair be available on the 16th?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Good. It's always awkward when both of you are gone. Oh, I just, so you know, I tried to take over a little bit more, so. Okay, thank you all for your service this evening. Enjoy your evening.
Do we wanna end the meeting another time?
Which
Okay.
reflected when we ended the public
He did fine.
Oh, okay,
or the housing.
Okay.
Action plan.
got you. Fine. I don't think it matters. It's so crappy.
Why don't we just dissolve like city, like a concerned citizens council?